Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Good, and joining me, as always, is my go-to podcast compadre, Joe Lever. Oh, gosh, you beat me to it. He jumped the gun.
I'm so impatient, I gotta just jump in there.
Well, maybe next time I should just have you do the introduction, and I can just sit here and just watch it.
Yeah, I gotta start taking a bit of a leadership role here, Jimmy. I think you're dropping the ball. I'm just kidding. You do an excellent job with the introductions. I'm just
apparently
in a good mood today.
Good mood. Good. That's good because it'll be a better podcast for it. And before we get into it today, Joe, I'd like to thank Jorn Evers for our amazing picture that we have here. Check out his Instagram down below. And this is Daleb for our cool intro-outro song. But on today's episode... They're all right. On today's episode, we're going to go over a few things because we had a lot going on last week in that we had E3 and a lot of stuff we covered there. But we're going to talk about more movies this week. So this week we're going to talk about the Justice League plot was just unveiled. So if you're not interested in that, I'll try to get timestamps this week so you can skip over it.
That's from Don't Care Studios?
Don't Care Studios. Nice job, Joe. DC, if anybody's like, what are you talking about?
That's horrible because I'm a big DC fan.
Yeah, I am too. But then we want to talk about kind of our dream Batman standalone movie villain because right now they've talked about doing a lot of them. We'll see. We'll get into that. We're going to go into the new Spider-Man director who was announced, John Watts, and then we're going to talk about a new kind of revelation from the new King Kong Skull Island movie and kind of get our take on some of the information we've just gotten about that. Let's get right into it. So, Joe, the plot for Justice League just got announced, and I was kind of hoping I could read it off to you quick, because I don't think you've seen this at all, have you?
Lay it on me, pal.
All right, I'm going to read it out right here. Fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's selfless act, Bruce Wayne enlists the help of his newfound ally, Diana Pierce, to face an even greater enemy. Together, Batman and Wonder Woman work quickly to find and recruit a team of metahumans to stand against the newly awakened threat. But, despite the formation of this unprecedented league of heroes, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and The Flash, it may already be too late to save the planet from an assault of catastrophic proportions. So, basically, Darkseid, right?
Isn't that what we're all thinking?
Yeah, I mean, they teased it a ton of Batman vs. Superman. So I guess from this, this isn't really any... thing new. I think we knew this was coming. This is basically what Batman vs Superman told us anyway. Kind of, it was basically setting this movie up.
Why? I think it's safe to assume that it's going to be Darkseid, but why go so big so quickly? I feel like that's like the top of the pyramid. That's where you end the series.
Yeah, that's
where the saga should end, really, because isn't he like the ultimate enemy in the DC universe?
Yeah, well, there always seems to be like the ultimate enemy that they face, and then they stop him, and then they either come back, or there's a new one that's stronger. But I see what you're saying, because he's definitely one of the big power players. He's kind of like a Thanos type, or like kind of like an Apocalypse type if you go off X-Men.
I mean, ultimate.
But he was even... Yeah, exactly. Some of these guys are really, really strong. But you're right. I think a lot of it is just kind of in response again to Marvel. I think they're saying like, all right, they built up to doing Thanos and stuff, but people know Darkseid already, and we can kind of go right to it. And the power levels, too, obviously, of the Justice League are pretty crazy when you compare them to Marvel. I mean, Marvel's still got strong people on their team, don't get me wrong, but the Justice League is... They're pretty overpowered crew. Some of them are.
True,
it's like, oh my gosh.
I mean, if you really break it down, the Justice League is a little more out there than, per se, Marvel. That's where Marvel gets a big thumbs up from me. I've never thought of it before, get out there, but that almost makes it more realistic and more grounded.
Oh, for sure. Which is weird because we always talk about doing all that stuff with like you look at how we think of the DC universe so far being kind of dark and gritty and more realistic, but in a lot of aspects, I think the Marvel movies, even though they're kind of more fun and lighthearted, they have more grounded heroes. Some
Except
of them, not
Thor.
all of them.
I think Thor is the
pretty
exception.
out there.
He's kind of out there, What exactly is he? A god or an alien?
Also, with the fact that Scarlet Witch isn't being called a straight up mutant, she's just like an enhanced, and she got her powers from the is it the Mind Gem or something like that? So now it's like her powers we don't even know, and Vision's a little weird too. But anyway, so we're talking the Darkseid. You're right. We're getting there. Darkseid is, I think, going to be the main bad guy. But do you think? Would you have rather had them fight? Not necessarily somebody lesser. They need someone who's going to be able to kind of stand up to them, and they also need to have someone which I feel like a lot of these movies do, need someone who has like an army that the people can just like destroy a ton of the minions, like the parademons, those flying creatures you saw in Batman vs Superman. Those are like Darkseid's minions. So I'm sure they're gonna have like tons of fight scenes with them getting destroyed by the Justice League.
Yeah,
as opposed to just fighting Darkseid.
But when I think of Darkseid, I think of, Smallville may have ruined it for me. I think of, okay, he's corrupting people and like almost, screwing with their brains, turning them into evil, negative people sort of thing. I mean, you think they're going to go that same route, take that same avenue?
No, I don't think so. It's the same with Brainiac in Smallville. He was vastly different, I felt, than the one in like the comics and stuff, or in like the animated show.
Yeah, I didn't know much about Brainiac, so I didn't really have anything to base my judgments off of. But
that's side note. I want Brainiac to be the next big villain for like Man of Steel 2. He's a really cool. He's like Ultron, but alien. If you don't know him, he's very cool. But yeah, I mean, I feel like they kind of have to almost do Darkseid, because right now I don't know who else they'd pick, because like Lex Luthor, we're not really sure. It's like we have Lex Jr., who's like in jail but might be breaking out, and his dad might still be at large, but he probably wouldn't be a big enough threat unless he teamed up with somebody.
His dad's still out there. Michael Rosenbaum coming back.
He's like, isn't he like Jesse Eisenberg's age almost?
I think he's close to 40 now. He's in his mid to late 30s, I think. But I think people should comment on this. Who played the best Lex Luthor? Michael Rosenbaum. I'm just saying, it's no contest. Don't even comment on that. If you say something else, I'll just it'll get ugly.
People are like, Kevin Spacey.
Shut up! Just shut up!
Shut up! Shut your face!
Kidding, just kidding.
No.
We want to hear
who you like.
Your thoughts. I'm curious. Listeners, you should comment on that. Let us know who you think the best Lex Luthor is.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, going into this, and they kind of like they had a whole bunch of news outlets go over to see the filming of Dawn of Justice, and there's been a lot of kind of information coming out of that. Mm-hmm. One of the things being that Superman's going to be resurrected, and the people on set weren't saying that out. They weren't just like, "Oh yeah, he's back." They're kind of begrudgingly telling people, because it's like, yeah, you gotta have Superman back in the team. Like, you can't just be like, "Yep, he's dead." Like,
just kidding.
He looks just like Henry Cavill.
Yeah. Coincidentally, they're twins. A father-son twin. Dude. All right, we're done.
Well, I was gonna say, it sounds like you've been directing these films.
Yeah, let's take a couple steps back.
But anyway, so you're kind of worried they're moving too far too fast with this.
I think so. I mean, they're basically going from. Well, first of all, at first I thought, wow, they're going Doomsday right away. I mean, geez, we're jumping up the steps pretty quick here. I mean, couldn't we like stick around at the bottom flight? We're already at the 10th story of the building, and I'm trying to think of a way
true.
A good analogy. But I mean, Doomsday to me, he's like, if you got a 10-story building, Doomsday's probably at like a 7 or an 8, probably even higher, probably an 8 or a 9. Mm-hmm. Darkseid is 10. I mean, to me, he's like the ultimate, right? So they went from I mean, and then Lex Luthor's probably like a 3.
Yeah, maybe his cunning might put him higher up there, but I mean, he always teams up with people. Right. I don't know, it's weird.
But basically, they started out with that in this Dawn of Batman.
Yeah, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, or BVS DOJ, or Dudge.
Too many abbreviations. Anyway, so they start out with Lex Luthor in the beginning of the movie through the mid part, but then it becomes more focused on Doomsday. So they went from tier 3 all the way up to tier 7, 8, 9, and then where do you go from there? Okay, they got to better themselves from the last movie and make it even grander. So they jumped the freaking Darkseid. Who's next? Where do they go from there, Jimmy? I mean, they're not stopping here, right? So who's next?
Yeah, it's true. I wonder if instead of doing Brainiac for a standalone, they could use him later down the line, because he's kind of like a galaxy-spanning threat.
That's true.
And then you kind of give Man of Steel to someone like maybe like 1 or 2 like smaller villains, kind of like, I keep forgetting his name, but the guy who had the kryptonite core, Metallo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could do Metallo, and then you have to have some like kind of minor people that Superman can fight, but also like they're not huge threats. As he's like, I can take this. Like it's a big enough threat for me, but I don't need the League to join me on this. So,
Yeah.
but I guess my question too, on top of that, is: do you think after this one they'll do any standalone things besides Batman where they're alone, or will they do something like Marvel where it's like this is like Man of Steel 2 featuring like Wonder Woman as well, you know, or something like that, or kind of
like
working
Iron
in other
Man
characters,
style, where you have somebody come in and assist. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. What do you think? Probably not.
My thought is, I don't think they're gonna go, okay, here's a Batman standalone, and here comes Man of Steel, Superman busting in to help save the day. I think it'll be
not
somebody,
for that one.
Maybe Wonder Woman, but man, Wonder Woman, she'll get her own standalone. Who's gonna help her? I mean,
Yeah,
I
true.
think they're gonna start developing these meta-humans that they have on the list. I think they're gonna be more featured in some of these. They'll have their own standalones, but I think it'll be more focused on them. I'm trying to think, what's a good example of Marvel movies where they had assists?
Well, I think of like they're a little bit more smaller, but like Winter Soldier, he had like Black Widow was there for a lot of it.
Yeah, so who
and stuff
so
like
say
that.
you got another Man of Steel movie, who would you have come in for the assist like that?
I don't know if you use too much Ben Affleck, like you're just trying to put Batman in there too much, then it might be like maybe like Aquaman would be kind of interesting because he's gonna have his own solo film, and it'd be kind of cool to see those two work together.
Sure. So I think they need to establish these solo films: Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, whatever. Once they kind of get those out of the way, then I think it's more diverse. You can kind of branch out with your two top tier characters, Batman and Superman, and kind of influx different heroes to kind of support those movies. Because I mean, the more you feature, the more it adds, the green dough. So.
Yeah, for sure, exactly. And we kind of touched on Batman's standalone thing, but they did confirm that Ben Affleck would be directing his own standalone. They're still working on the script, or something. He said he wasn't going to start working on this movie until the script was set. But he wants to feature more of like the detective side of Batman, kind of like the world's greatest detective. And there's been rumors that he could be kind of going up against like a lot of his rogues gallery. What do you think about them doing a kind of the Arkham games were like this, where it's like one night they pick like a really bad night for Batman, and he goes up against like 5-6 of these guys in rapid succession, and he's just kind of like around every corner there's just another bad guy, and it's
for
like,
example,
crap. Do you think that'd be cool?
What would these villains be comprised of? Who are we talking?
So it would be like his, the ones like the big ones for him. So you're talking like, I don't know if Joker would be in it, but you have maybe like Riddler, maybe like Penguin, maybe like Ivy. Sure. Maybe stuff like that. I mean, Two-Face, if you want to do that again. It might be too soon to do Two-Face, just because he was in Dark Knight.
Yeah, that's true. But
the other thing
ones
is,
you mentioned there, we haven't seen in a Batman film since 1996.
It was a while ago. Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, we did see a good Riddler performance by Jesse Eisenberg in this last Batman vs. Superman movie.
I wonder if they could do enough hair and makeup that totally changes.
They don't have to. He just has the hair and everything.
I know,
just,
but
if he puts on a green suit
and be like, "Wait, I thought that was Lex Luthor."
That's the biggest riddle. He's like, "I was never Lex ever," and then he's like, "Ha ha!"
I was impersonating him. Ha ha.
That'd be perfect. But would you be interested in kind of like a crazy, like maybe a Prison Break type of thing, or like a movie like that where it's kind of like rapidly kind of going through all the maybe the lesser known rogues or things like that, or people that have been in those older movies and are getting another shot?
No, I'm all for that. And you know what? We're going to be talking about directors a little bit tonight, even later in the segment. But Ben Affleck, I never saw Gone Girl, but I heard just outrageously good reviews. People loved it. Engaging, thriller. It made you really think, right? The guy's got some skills in that department, so I think he could really take something that's, superhero grandeur and make it more intimate and engaging for the audience, where they actually have to think and they're not just sitting there waiting for the next explosion or punch to be thrown. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think that changed the way we look at certain superhero movies. I think if he makes it more intimate and engaging than, say, something like The Dark Knight was, where it's kind of more on a bit of a larger scale, you have Bane and you have these bombs or whatever that he's taking around, whatever, that sort of thing. If it's more intimate and he's, taking down this syndicate or something like that and almost like a video game style, and every clue is leading him to the head honcho sort of a deal. That could be really cool. And the Arkham games, I played a little bit of one of them, and they're good. And if they kind of follow that style a little bit, it could be a lot of fun. And I'd like to take Batman and make him make his films more of a brain teaser, so to speak, you know, where you're just like, God, what's going to happen next, you know, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat, like, oh, I didn't expect that. Something like that would be really cool, I think, and less of okay, this guy just attacked this, I'm going to track him down and we're going to have an epic battle. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We've seen that time and time again, so a different take on it could be refreshing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And just for everyone to stop, because you're going to try to write comments about this, Joe's referring to Dark Knight Rises, not the Dark Knight. Dark Knight, obviously, is the one with Joker. You're referring to Dark Knight Rises with Bane and the bombs, yeah, sure. And like him taking over Gotham.
Series, whatever.
Yeah, Dark Knight, even though it was, that one is a little more intimate, you know, his Joker was mostly just about, like, kind of like, I just kind of want to turn the city against itself. But that series is more about, like, the city itself being corrupted. Yeah. And I don't know if they'd play with that as much as just being a little more focused on the characters and not so much the city itself. Yeah. So that could be very interesting. The one villain I want to see, though, Joe, and you can tell me what villain you want to see, but I got to see Mr. Freeze again. I want to see a good Mr. Freeze because Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, he tried, but they kind of gave him a lot of just, like, cold puns to work with. And Mr. Freeze is supposed to be this kind of really intelligent, very interesting, kind of empathetic villain because he's trying to do all this stuff to save his wife, and that never comes across really in that movie. I mean, she's there, but it's just he's so weird, and it's too comic booky. I think it'd be cool to see kind of, or maybe I should say it's too loosey-goosey with that. I'd rather it be more of a serious Mr. Freeze, one that can talk with Batman on kind of an intellectual level.
I don't want him to be too hokey either.
No, exactly. The nice thing about Freeze, though, is that, like, they did this the best in, like, the Arkham trilogy, if you will, but, like, in Arkham City, he's one of the best bad guys because he kind of changes his tactics. Like, if you use one attack on him, he will adapt to that, and you can't do it again. And you can never attack him head-on. And that's been a thing with Batman. He's never been able to fight Freeze head-on. Like, if he gets the Joker or Riddler, he can knock him out or whatever. But Freeze is like an armor. He's got the big freeze gun. Like, he will not stop the guy. If you just go charging at him, he'll destroy you. So he has to kind of outthink his enemy, which I think is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So that'd be nice to see. Kind of a little bit like Bane, a little bit. But Freeze is much more of an interesting character, I think. So I would love to see Freeze. But are there any villains or just even minor villains from Batman that you're just like, oh man, that'd be kind of cool to see them again or see like a new incarnation of them?
Yeah, a new incarnation would be cool. One that I'd like to mention is Scarecrow.
Oh yeah, there's a good one.
Liked him. I mean, I don't see him as much of like a physical threat.
Yeah,
but
no.
You know, they could twist it into some cool directions and whatnot. But
yeah,
he's just a cool character to me. But yeah, Joker's top tier villain for him.
I think you don't want to overplay the Joker.
If they introduce some sort of like mob aspect to it, where then they could really turn into cool. like a mystery thriller type deal, that would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mixed in with some action, obviously, because I mean it's a Batman movie. He's got to fight and take out some goons, and eventually, you know, take out the main guy. But Riddler, being that he's so. He is his name, the Riddler. You know, I mean, tricky, twists and turns, never quite understand. That could be cool, especially if they introduce it with some sort of like crime syndicate, etc., or some larger scale plot that he's involved in. So, same thing with maybe Penguin, but you know, I don't want it to be because the comics, okay, it's cool, but modern day, they should give a modern day twist to it, the way they look, etc. Make it a more realistic deal, and they could really do something cool with these characters. Poison Ivy would be neat. I don't know if I see her being like a main villain per se.
Yeah.
But then Mr. Freeze too. That's a good one, as you said. But like I said, you know, bring them to modern day realism, keep some aspects of their comic book history in there, but don't make it too hokey. Because we've seen it back in the day with the old Batman films or whatever. Where
sure.
I mean, it's so true to the comics, but it's a little hokey. And with the direction these DC movies are going, they need to bring it to real life and make them real, just kind of, ominous and bring it to real life. So,
sure. Well, I think that it's a fine line between, we're looking at those old Batman movies and then like The Dark Knight, which is just almost too realistic and gritty, and then people, did very well. People really enjoyed it. But I think this universe is something in between where it can't really be that, because it can't be grounded, especially after the events of, Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel, because it's already kind of like
and
larger
to be
than
real
life.
Clear, I'm almost thinking more in an aesthetic point of view.
Okay.
Because I get that. I mean, these things are larger than life and crazy, like Doomsday. I mean, I get what you mean. It's not really grounded. I mean, it's alien-esque, etc. But I'm thinking aesthetically. I don't want them to appear to be super cartoony, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
I don't want Riddler to be in the true like skin tight question mark jumpsuit. Something more, because he's a real person. Does Riddler even
there's
have
a fine line
superpowers?
again. No. So, most of Batman's villains don't. I don't think. But I think they'll probably do something kind of like Suicide Squad, where you look at them and you're kind of like, all right, they're kind of on the line. Like normal people would never probably wear that stuff, but these guys do.
They're just a little
and it kind of makes sense
but
for their
they're
character.
still pretty realistic looking.
Yeah.
They're not too comic booky feeling. So.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll see where that goes. It will be interesting regardless. And I like your idea of the Riddler. I kind of like thinking maybe like he could be the one kind of orchestrating everything and like kind of sending Batman through like one really bad night. And like he's sending clues to him, and Batman goes to a place and he goes to a warehouse and it's like, oh crap, Penguin's here with his mob. He's like, well, I gotta take these guys down. There's like a weapons deal between him and Two-Face going on right now. I gotta stop this. And then it's like he goes to the next place and like Croc left the Suicide Squad and he gets attacked by him in the sewers or something.
Sure.
It's just like a whole night of just like Batman just like, I'm so tired, please just stop. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Riddler kind of taking him through a strategically placed set of clues to lead him through all this hazardous, all these hazardous avenues. So.
Yeah, and it would be nice to see him save some civilians, which is something we don't get a lot in superhero movies anymore. It'd be cool if, like, the Riddler, placed, like, a bomb on some place and had, like, a bunch of, like, captives. And he's like, you gotta answer these questions. These are riddles. You gotta answer them, and, like, time's ticking. It could be really suspenseful of Batman with, like, Affleck directing that. It could be interesting. But we'll see if they do anything like that. But I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say, for the Batman standalone. I'm actually more excited to see that than this next... Justice League video or movie.
I don't know about
I'm not
that,
really
but,
sure.
I agree. It's pretty intriguing, almost on an equal level for me. Plus, I know that Ben Affleck he has some directing prowess, so I think he'll do a good job. I don't really have any reservations there.
Yeah, I just think whatever they crank out is going to be, unfortunately, it will probably pale in comparison to the setup that Marvel's done. So when they get to that Thanos fight with all of them, especially after that airport scene in Civil War, I feel like their action's really good, and I hope the action of DC can also be ramped up a bit and kind of do justice,
if you will,
pun
the introduction
intended.
of some of these other metahumans and other characters, I think it will get there. Because right now you're too used to seeing just, a really strong guy that can fly, and then Batman who's just got some gadgetry, I think once I mix in some more super-powered, kind of out-there characters, it'll be a little more interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this movie, the standalone for Batman, is going to be a prequel or not, but from what it sounded like is that he's kind of like, at least after Batman vs. Superman, Batman's like wants to redeem himself. He's not going to be killing people anymore, which is, I guess, it's good because he's more true to the character. But that Batman looked older and kind of war-torn, I felt like, in Batman vs. Superman, so I don't know if they're going to kind of age him down a little bit in this next one. He's going to be like, I'm right, I'm starting a Justice League, like, I'm ready to go, guys. Like, he's not like,
that I'm interested
so
in. So, yeah, that brings up a good point. Ben Affleck's up there. He's in his 40s, right?
I think
eventually, it's going to get to the point where, Batman's getting a little old. His knees are starting to hurt, kind of like Christian Bale style at the end there. But maybe they do something where they start, in a few years, or when they get through some of these movies, Batman's successor. Maybe they get into a little bit of Batman Beyond style or something, huh?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was like, I don't know if he's going to bring it up, because if he doesn't, I'm totally going to be like, Batman Beyond.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a kid, I thought those cartoons are cool, and I
So
like
good.
the younger Batman, more sleek looking, kind of gadgety, but just more of a jumping off of things and high flying, kicking butt kind of guy.
Yeah, he had more of an Iron Man suit on, kind of. It was like sleek fitting.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that they have to kind of go a little far future with that. They don't necessarily have to. That's just how the show was.
Yeah,
I guess they could do one more of a modern
so far
day
in the future. I mean, we don't need flying cars or anything. I think they could just as easily introduce him as Batman's successor just in a few years. I don't think they have to
Terry
be
McGinnis.
the setting of the cartoon or anything.
We'll see. I don't know. That'd be cool. You have to also... It would be like the last one that you could probably do with Affleck unless you aged him up a ton for just that movie and did a standalone, 50 years in the future. Batman's really old, Alfred's dead, and he got a successor. And here's that story. But Ben Affleck is still doing Batman movies on the side, with the Justice League. I don't know.
Do that, yeah. Or, who knows how long this saga will go on for, these movies and these specific characters and actors who play them. Who knows how long they can keep that going? I mean, I guess with makeup and stuff, they can make Affleck and Cavill look as young as they want for quite a while. But
that's true.
But I think that's a good avenue for them to take. They can take that avenue and kind of introduce that to keep it fresh and to keep the story going. It's
for sure,
an outlet there. So
yeah, I'm excited. Well, it's kind of like the Robert Downey Jr. thing and some of those other kind of older people at Marvel a little bit, where it's like, well, if he leaves, you can't really recast Iron Man. Do you just kind of put him in a suit and just have him do voiceover for the next 20 years
why does
and
he
just
never
come
come
collect
out
your
of a
paycheck?
suit?
Well, yeah, exactly. And the new ones are like, he's always flying around. He just sits down at meetings. It's like, is he really in there? Is it the robot or the remote one again? What's going on? I'm like, Tony? He's just collecting paycheck after paycheck. Exactly. Hello, Mr. Stark. But yeah, no, I'm excited about those movies, and we'll see where they go with it. But hopefully DC, I want DC to do well, and it might sound, again, like we're, especially me, I am much more, I think, a Marvel fan, but I still want them to do well because it'll just push both groups to do better.
I mean, I got good feelings off of the latest DC movie, Batman vs. Superman, and I got good feelings off of Man of Steel. I liked them a lot. I didn't quite get the same feeling I got from Captain America Civil War. I mean, that was just a smorgasbord of good filmmaking. But
smorgasbord, I love it.
But Marvel's done a good job there. But you still got to realize, I mean, it's too easy to compare to the two because they're both superhero movies. They're very similar franchises, Marvel, DC. So everybody always compares them. But I think people have to kind of create a wall there and separate the two and realize that they're different. Yeah, maybe they're a little bit better just because of the way they're developing the story and leading up to a big, what's the word? Where you're ramping up in the story, all of a sudden you get to the climax. There you go.
The climax of it,
which is definitely, they're doing a good job of building up to. Whereas DC, we're kind of still feeling it out. We don't know how they're going to build up to that climax, or maybe they're already there too early. Oh.
We'll see. We're not going to make any weird jokes now, are we?
They're all rolling around in there, but I'll refrain, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
You understand what I'm saying. I feel like they need to separate themselves and stop feeling like they need to play catch up. They can take their time and do it right. They don't have to be at the same level as Marvel right now. They can build up to that. You know what I mean? I feel like they're almost assuming too much pressure and thinking that they have to be at that same level as Marvel is right now. I think they can get there. They just need time and they need to do it right, But so in my mind, I kind of separate the two. I enjoy them for what they are. So I try not to compare them. I mean, I do in a way, but I try to really treat them as a separate deal. So
fair enough. I think the other thing too is that they're kind of worried seeing that Spider-Man getting a deal with Sony and Marvel and Disney all together, and the thought that maybe if X-Men one day does the same thing, and then it really if used correctly, like, it'll be hard to try and stop Marvel from doing, like, just very, very well and being just, like, no competition to them. And I think they're just trying to be like, hey, look at us, we can do the same things. We're doing this Thanos, or we're doing Darkseid before they even got Thanos out there. Look how cool Darkseid is. Like, they want to get him out and be like, they're copying us. And I feel like there's really
still such a market out there and a fan base for DC, though. It'll come. They don't need to just... It's like a one-upper thing. Like, oh, we did this. We're better than you. Oh, but Marvel just did this. They're way better than you. Oh, we're there too. We just released this. I kind of hate that, but they're gonna make money if they just take their time and do it right. There are so many Batman, Superman fans out there, Wonder Woman, etc. I get that there's probably smarter people than me out there doing calculations and doing actual science behind what's the best way to make money here, but
yeah, for sure.
For me, I know I'm going to go see it regardless, so I'd rather see something of quality because they took their time and did it right than go, oh, they just force-fed us this one to try and compete with Marvel. And it fell short.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's what's going to happen ultimately if they keep rushing.
Yeah, and maybe the thought, if I was over at WB, I would think, like, Marvel is doing very, very well right now. They're enjoying a lot of success, but this can't go on forever, and it would be nice to just be like, all right, why rush into these kind of co-op movies? Just, start, like I always say, it's like you start off with the ones like, Marvel did and be like, all right, I'll just do our separate Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, all that stuff, and then come together, as opposed to being like, all right, like, let's shoehorn Batman in somewhere and let's just make a, Justice League thing and then go out and do all the separate movies.
Yeah, because if they start out doing the separate movies, like you said, it's like when we saw Marvel, we saw that first taste of Iron Man, and then it was just left audiences wanting more and more, and that would happen the same with DC. You gotta give us that taste, and then we start to crave it, like a good cigar or cigarette, Just kidding. I don't smoke.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, jeez, Joe, what the heck's going on over there?
Substance, right?
Oreos, man.
Oreos.
You get just a whiff of Oreos. You just want the whole box.
Cream filling stuff.
Oh my gosh! Don't even start talking about that. Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna go get a glass.
Anyway,
I'll be right back.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, well, that's I think that's it for. Speaking of Oreos, speaking of Marvel, because we're just getting on that. Spider-Man: Homecoming has a director, and you were talking to me about this, and you want to talk about him. This guy's name is John Watts.
What, did you think I forgot his name, Jimmy? I was gonna say it.
I thought you were gonna, because you're like, I have to remember light bulbs, like Watts. Like
for those of you listening, I couldn't remember the director's name, even though I read the article and I was telling Jimmy about this, and I'm like, God, what's his name again? So John Watts, yes. So
not as good as Mark Webb, who was on the last one. I mean, as far as like names go, because his name was, I was like, oh man, his last name's Webb. That's like perfect for this. And then I was like, not really for the movie.
It was
but
too
his
perfect.
name's good. He's super, just like Andrew Garfield's hair. It was too perfect. Am I right? But no. So you want to talk about this? So I kind of want to let you go off with this, and I'll chime in here and there.
Where I said we'd talk about directors more. So John Watts doing the new Spider-Man Homecoming standalone.
Mm-hmm.
So John Watts started. What did he do? He did like a Sundance film, little indie film.
Sure.
What was it? Cop Car. No one knows what it is. Whatever.
Something
Look it
like
up. That. Then he did Clown, which I think wasn't that like some sort of little play off of the movie It from Stephen King, his novel. Anyway, it was something like that. And then, so he's not really well known. He hasn't done anything totally big time, in the mainstream that everybody's seen. So he's kind of young guy coming up in the ranks. And I actually heard, the thing that sparked my interest on this topic was the Jason Ellis show on Sirius Satellite Radio, Faction 41. I listen to that all the time, and sometimes they surprisingly talk about some cool stuff that I'm interested in. And they were talking about this, and I was nodding along, like, yeah, that is weird. So he's a guy that's not very well known. He hasn't done anything that's super big that really gives him credit to his name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what Marvel, Disney, Sony, what they're doing is they're plucking somebody young out of the ranks that they can kind of almost mold and maybe have a slight bit more control over. So to me, doesn't it seem like that's their goal, is to get somebody that they can kind of harness and kind of mold into this role of creating these great films? Maybe they can have a little bit, get their fingers in the movie a little bit more. Because, I think they were actually interviewing on the radio show. I think they were interviewing another director, and that's how they got on this topic. And this director said something that I thought was interesting. He's like, for so long, directors have had the attitude of, we're artists, We're essentially painting one really big, beautiful picture in a film. And this guy's like, that's garbage. That's crap. We're not. We're here to make an audience enjoy a movie. We shouldn't be thinking about, how do I make this pretty, or how do I make it so I like it. We got to think about, how do we make an audience enjoy this? How do we engage the audience? How do we get them involved in the movie? How do we make them feel connected to it? How do we make it resonate with their emotions, etc.? And I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, geez, guy, why the heck didn't they pick you to do this movie? Anywho.
Yeah.
So I think that's true, and I think the studios are looking at this like, young guy, we're going to mold him a little bit. We're going to be able to have a bit more control and direction over where he takes the film, etc. I think that's kind of their thought behind plucking somebody like that for this movie. What are your thoughts on it? You think there's any other motives there for picking somebody of his caliber to do a movie like this?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Joe. And, when I saw this at first, I was thinking, looking at his IMDb page or whatever, and thinking, man, this guy hasn't really done a lot. And I always think it's weird when a studio does this, but it makes sense now where they pick someone who's very young and fresh, and they can kind of, direct the director, if you will. And if you look, there's two examples I could like to bring up. Ant-Man, who is going to be directed by Edgar Wright, who is it was supposed to be kind of more artistic and different. And he left eventually because they were having creative differences.
Sure.
And then
see, that's where you get that director that maybe has more of an artistic pathway as opposed to somebody who's more in it for the audience and giving them something enjoyable. But continue, sorry.
Mm-hmm. And that's fine. And then you have Ang Lee's Hulk, that was way back in 2003 or something like that. And that movie definitely had more artistic vision to it. And that can work in some movies, but for these specific types of films, I'm not saying that it just cannot work flat out, but it is much more of a risk. And I think there's so much more money going into it, and you don't want to have a director who's just very obstinate and is stubborn and says you know what, no, this is the way I'm doing it. This is my movie, and it's no, you're there on the the company's dime, especially for this. You can do your Cannes Film Festival artistic little thing if you want to, but you are not taking my Avengers film and crafting it into some sort of interesting modern art comparison piece or something like that. It's just you can't do that. So that makes total sense that they're doing this. It makes sense.
Yeah, and who knows? I'm sure he shows quite a bit of talent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have grabbed him, right? So his smaller budget movies must have been pretty dang good, And I think it maybe comes down to, okay, maybe he's really good at doing what a director should, which is really being able to, I don't want to say control, that's not the right word. Well, direct the actors. Give them direction on how they want them to react to certain situations, how they want them to, show emotion and deliver certain lines. Maybe that's where this guy's strengths lie. And I think when you really break it down, if a director can do that, especially in these large-scale, big-budget movies, that's something that's, sometimes they rely too much on the CGI and the explosions and the action. But if you can also make these large-scale, bigger-than-life characters, deliver intimate lines, emotional lines, and really get the audience, hooked on it and kind of eating it up. If a director can do that with the actors on screen, I think that's the essential part there. And if they can do that with this guy, and if that guy has, the right talents to do it, then good on him. So,
yeah, it's interesting how directors work, actually, Joe. Because again, I'm thinking of two other specific cases. You have Gareth Edwards, who was doing small budget little things, and he ended up directing that last Godzilla, which we saw in IMAX.
Which was
pretty
a good
movie.
The problem there is I felt like you don't get too connected to the characters. You're so focused on where's Godzilla? Is he going to show up again?
Exactly. Well, they don't, and they were also kind of wooden. And those same characters, if you don't know them, they're Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's weird because they're brother and sister there, but then Godzilla, they're husband and wife. So it was like seeing them and then seeing them again. And then you have someone like Peter Jackson, who was doing smaller time things, then ended up doing Lord of the Rings, which is a little different just because they kind of compared that to being like the biggest indie film that's ever been made kind of thing. So it wasn't necessarily like a big, like they still had a lot of production, New Line Cinema and all that, but it's just interesting to see how, they pick directors like that. We've just never heard of them, and you kind of plop them into this huge world with all this money, and it's kind of like you have all the toys and do all this, but there's only a few caveats, and it's kind of like you have Disney in the back seat, in some of these cases, like with Spider-Man now, he's like, they're going to be there. Kevin Feige with Marvel, they're going to be there. And the same thing happened with Rogue One, which we were talking about. It's where, they have these ideas, or the script is kind of weird, or something's kind of wrong, and where these companies are stepping in and taking control. And I think having a director that's more amiable or much, newer, wet behind the ears, so to say, they're much more, amicable to such things, because it's just like, well, that's just how it's done, right? Like, no one's going to sit there. Like, if you did that to Steven Spielberg, it might be different. But you do it to this guy, and he's probably just like, yeah, sure, like, whatever. I'm getting, like, it's huge.
The guy. I mean, he's probably really good. Otherwise, they wouldn't pick him. But, not discrediting him at all. I think these studios, they need somebody who's going to be receptive to their big ideas and what they foresee for the future of the films, and how they connect. So, I mean, you ultimately need that overbearing, not overbearing is a bad word, but like a overseen role.
Overarching, if you will, yeah.
They need that role over top of them to kind of help with the direction of the film, in order for them to connect properly and send out the right message. Otherwise, you end up with those ones that are too little artsy, and they don't really hit home or have a final big climax and final conclusion like they should. Or they become too focused on little things that they shouldn't be. They get like when I was in college, it was like we took these drawing classes, and one of the big tips they always give you is don't get too focused on things that you're working on. Like, you're working on drawing, like say you're working on drawing a race car driver, and he's got a really intricate helmet with a cool design on the helmet. Don't get so focused on those details. You got to step back and kind of look at the big picture and make sure that it's blending with the rest of the picture. Because sometimes that helmet will look extremely detailed, but the rest of it is kind of vague and hazy, and you're like, oh. So then you got to catch the rest of the picture up to that detail. And that's the same with films. I think it's a good analogy. So you really can't get too focused on certain things. Like, oh, this little love story here, when essentially these movies have a much broader thought, broader, scope. It's about a much bigger picture than just like that small thing. But I do feel that you need these details in there. You just can't get too hung up on them throughout a film. So hopefully that's where you have the studio coming in and kind of giving the directors a little bit of a push or a little bit of aid to kind of fine tune things, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's okay. I know you're calling out Amazing Spider-Man 2 there because you're saying they focus too much on the romance, and I completely agree with you. No, I'm just kidding.
And they sound kind of... I'm not much of a, what do you want to say? Listen, I'm a real man, all right? I don't get hung up on those love stories, but I appreciate them. I think a little bit of romance
for sure.
In any movie adds a good aspect, and another thing that really, regardless of if you're that manly man or you're the girl going with the boyfriend to see the guy flick. I mean, you want to see that a little bit because it appeals to everybody, regardless of how you think you are. I mean, yeah, sure, you're a manly man, but really deep down you appreciate it and you kind of resonate with it a little bit. You're like, oh man, I hope he gets the girl. So so there's nothing wrong with mixing that in some of these movies. But
yeah, well, that's some really good points there about the directors and stuff like that. And I'm really hoping that moving forward, Not that they need to have their say in everything, but I really like what the Russo brothers have done with, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and then Civil War, and they're going to be doing Infinity War Part 1 and 2. So, yeah, and I just think it'd be cool if, like, all these directors from all these movies, it's not like we're going to have always the same directors doing the same little franchises like Thor and stuff, but the ones who are doing, the first and second ones, and maybe even the third ones, it would be kind of nice if they could all just kind of sit down, and maybe they do this, but kind of like chat about like, oh, like what's the goal here? What are we trying to do? And just make sure the movies are, kind of uniform in that sense while still being distinct. Because, if you go too far into left field with one of the movies, like if they take Doctor Strange and go just like way, way, way crazy with it, and it's like, okay, this movie doesn't seem like it fits in at all. But at the same time, they don't want to just like dumb it way down and just be like really boring and bland with it. It's got to stand alone, but also be part of a whole. And I think that's hard to do, and it's easier to have these kind of new directors where they're not concerned about, that as much. You've got people who are watching you to make sure you do that. It's not... Because if you get out of line, they'll be like, hey, you know what? We saw your script changes, or like you're changing the third act or something. Yeah, we're not doing that. Like, so I'm excited though. I think that movie's going to be really cool, and it's going to be nice to see. Hopefully, a very, very true kind of Peter Parker back in high school. This will be the third time we've seen him in high school, which is insane.
I'm putting the rest of the Spider-Man stuff out of my mind. This is starting fresh. I'm capable of that. I'm interested to see, how they develop it and where they go with the character. And, we talked about these young actors that maybe don't have big films to their names. He's not such a big name director. The same can be said for actors. How many times, Jimmy, do you see a movie, and it's, a big budget movie, whatever, but you see, Ben Affleck may be a good example, although I don't have any gripes about him. I think he did an excellent job as Batman, but... how would you have felt if they pick a no-name actor to play a role like that, To me, I think that gives it a fresher start. You don't recognize this guy from anything else. You don't have any previously generated opinions about the guy or the woman. I think that's cool if you got that no-name actor playing a pivotal role in a film. I think... that adds something to it for me. It makes it seem more real and lets me delve into a film a little bit more. I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good opinion. Or at least I like that idea, and I mimic it in some respects. It's nice for something like Spider-Man to be someone that's brand new, because if you bring in anyone new who's already been in the business for a while, typically Spider-Man is usually like a younger character and grows into the role. So if you picked someone that's already been in there for a while, some actor, it might be a little rough in a transition, but there's some roles where I think, like, the upcoming, I haven't seen yet obviously, but Doctor Strange, I think picking someone who is a little more established like Benedict Cumberbatch is probably a good idea. Okay. You could have probably gone with a no-name, and that might have been good because they probably could have just like skyrocketed somebody's career. But I completely agree. More often than not, if someone's like, hey, who do you want to see play this character, like in this superhero, I'm like, someone I've never seen before. Because if someone, like, they're like, how about this person? I'm like, I just can't see it. Like, no amount of makeup or whatever is going to change my mind. Because one really good example, I heard this recently, is that Anthony Hopkins plays Odin from the Thor movies. He's pretty great. I think he's a great Thor, or a great Odin. He's a great dad to Thor, whatnot. Mel Gibson was originally offered that role. I don't care what you do. I'm sure he's a good actor. He's just kind of like a psycho, but I just don't see him being like, and that's just like a small case.
Still alive.
Yeah, well, he is. But I do agree with you. I think that's, more often than not, it's good to pick someone brand new, and I think a lot of the movies are doing that. Plus, they can kind of get these people in if they're younger to sign these multi-movie contracts. That's why they've aged down someone like Peter Parker a little bit. He's like the youngest he can be right now. And his Aunt May, people are like, oh, she's like the sexy aunt. It's like, yeah, but if she's going to do 10 movies, we want to make sure she doesn't age out or
she'll grow
get any
role,
kind
right?
of
And,
yeah, she won't have any health conditions. I mean, look at the Aunt May you had, especially back in the first Spider-Man trilogy. I love her. I think she was the best Aunt May, best Uncle Ben. But they were pretty old.
Yeah,
like they were very old.
And
it was like
be around for maybe one more installment, and that was it.
Well, maybe, yeah, exactly. Even though she even did like some stunts, kind of like minor stunts in that second one, if you remember with Doc Ock. I mean, it wasn't really her up on a building, but
no nonsense.
It's stuff like that.
Up there, I saw
oh yeah, they did it without wires or anything. She's like, I'm doing this. I was like, good on you, Aunt May. But yeah, so I think it's a good thing. But So yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about with that Spider-Man Homecoming director? You're kind of interested though, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I don't mind if the studio has a bit more control, has their fingers in the pudding, so to speak. I like that. So, because overall, that bigger, they have the broader picture in mind, and that they have the resources to be able to make sure it's done right. So.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I just thought it was interesting, but I like the remarks that the person they were having that conversation with. He was, talking about the artistic vision versus, having the audience in mind more so.
Yeah.
So I like that, and that's dependent on the film. If you're doing more of an artsy type film, like for Sundance or whatever, or there are some big budget movies that are more artistic. More artistically geared, so that's fine. But these movies just aren't really set up for that. So
yeah,
with there are exceptions. There's certain aspects of these movies where you can do that. But so the other thing I was thinking about, so off the director topic, Spider-Man Homecoming.
He's tangenting.
What do you think it's going to be about? Come on, let's assume
we already
some things.
I feel like we did this. We already did this, remember? Because we did Black Panther and Spider-Man. We already assumed some things.
Yeah,
I think.
But now that I have the name, for
did.
some reason when they say Homecoming, I'm like thinking of some things. He's still in high school,
the
right?
one rumor...
So he's taking his girlfriend, gal pal, to the homecoming dance, and this guy spikes the Kool-Aid, and things go terribly wrong.
Yep, and then he does a really crazy dance, a la Tobey Maguire. One rumor I heard, which was kind of nuts, because DC's been doing like the multiverse, at least in like the Flash and stuff. But one I heard, which was kind of interesting to me, and I kind of liked, from Mr. Sunday Movies. If you haven't checked him out, by the way, go check him out. Tell him Critical Review sent you. But Mr. Sunday Movies does this podcast called The Weekly Planet, and it was either there or one of his videos. But he said, like, what happens if they do the multiverse and then you pull in for the last time, like you have like not time hopping, but like a dimensional rifts type of situation where you get both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back as their own respective Spider-Men in for this one movie, and it's like it's the homecoming of these Spider-Men together to fight whatever it is, and it's the last time you see either of them. That would be pretty crazy for a first movie, I think. It'd be cool, but it would be like way too much. It'd be like, there's 3 Spider-Men.
This is a Spider-Man from this dimension. He's Dimension 1. There's a Spider-Man.
Yeah, what if it's a Spider-Men Homecoming? Probably not.
Mind blown.
It's probably not. I don't know if there's a comic named after Homecoming. There might be, but I'm guessing that whatever it is, it's not going to be anything that nuts. But it would be kind of cool. And a little side note, I do want Sam Raimi. He's voiced, and he said that he would love to come back and direct another Spider-Man. I'd love to see him come back for the second Spider-Man and have his crack at Venom the formal way and give him a shot. But for Homecoming, I have honestly no idea what they're gonna do. Probably nothing crazy though. I think they're just gonna make a good Spider-Man movie. Just crank it out. Hopefully Russo's will come in and be like, this is how you choreograph a really sick fight scene and make it look like every time he punches somebody it feels real good. Like when Cap does it, you're like, oh yeah, you got him, Cap.
Yeah, you know what?
Except
I like
Spider-Man
about
would
these
obliterate
movies,
you.
and I've noticed it a few times, is when they hit each other. Like when Cap hits somebody, it's not like that cheesy sound that you hear from all the action flicks where it's like, I can't make the sound, but it's more of
it's
a
like the
thud
Indiana Jones.
instead of a spat. Yeah. It's more of a thud, which I like.
Yeah, the
because
thuds
let's face it, when you punch somebody, it's not a. It's more of a thud.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I haven't gone around punching people.
I've beat up my fair share of thugs in my day. Kind of a mediocre Batman, if you will, but
mediocre something.
Oh, jeez, ouch. All right, so kidding. Jumping on, endless possibilities there. I hope it's good, and I'm sure it will be. So.
Well, let us know in the comments, guys. What do you want to see in Homecoming? Like, who are the villains? Like, what's the plot? I mean, just little brief things if you want to talk about it, because I'm sure a lot of people have their own opinions. We've seen a lot so far. We have had 5 Spider-Man movies, and this will be our 6th, and hopefully this will be the last one that starts the franchise off again for a long time. Because I heard they're gonna gloss over the origin stuff, which I'm really happy about. Like, you don't have to focus on Ben getting shot and like a spider biting him. Just kind of have Peter talk about that as he's flying through the city. And just keep going with his life. Just like, all right, let's go. So, anyway, there's one. I just want to branch off quickly from. I want to talk about King Kong. I just wanted to kind of do a little news update on this. So Warcraft, we were talking about Warcraft a little while ago and how it's faring, you know, and I was like, oh, I don't know if they're going to make a sequel, blah, blah, blah. So unfortunately, last I heard that it did not make a ton of money in the U.S. It opened with $24 million, which sounds like a lot, but it's not. And then it made just $6.5 million this past weekend. And that's a huge drop-off. A lot of superhero movies and things like that do that, so that's not uncommon, but the percentages are the same while the ratio of them is very different, where you look at like Civil War, which made a ton more than that, and then dropped off 70%. But outside the U.S., however, it's completely different. Warcraft has earned $377 million. 339 of that's outside the U.S., and $200 million of that is from China alone, which is insane. That's kind of like Transformers, the latest one, like the fourth one, Age of Extinction. But that one made more sense to me because it was set, a lot of it was in China. Whereas Warcraft, I don't know if they shot some in China or what's going on, if they have a lot of ardent fans in China. But either way, I'm happy for them, and I just kind of wanted to touch back on base with you on that, because I said probably like $500 million to kind of, you know, like really, like they have to make a sequel. But it sounds like it's a likely go for a sequel, so I'm happy for Warcraft, because I think it was the best film in the world, but I thought it was still worth seeing. But if you haven't seen it and you want to, go check it out. And if you have seen it, check out the review on the channel, because I would love to know your thoughts.
So you've said it's like it's more of a theater-style movie. That's where you should see it, but I probably won't see it
definitely.
Until it's, available on.
I wish you lived closer, Joe, because I'd just say, let's go see it right now. Because I'd be like, let's just go watch it so you can get a feel for it. But anyway, the last thing I want to talk about today, as far as news goes, and as far as just like the last segment here, King Kong, Skull Island. Tom Hiddleston's going to be in it. A bunch of people are going to be in it. But they just released an interesting... Yes, Tom! Loki! Which for him, that's great, because you see him everywhere. And I'm like, it's Loki, but you still rock. Like, you're still good.
Loki's dating Taylor Swift these days?
I don't want to know these things.
Yeah. They met at, the Met Gala, and they danced together or something. Next thing you know, they're going on little intimate dates.
She's like, you know what the first thing I thought about was when I saw him? She's like, I knew you were trouble when you walked in. It's I gotcha, Taylor. Yeah. Because Taylor's an ardent fan of the show. Hi, Taylor. Love and hugs. Anyway, King Kong. King Kong typically in the past is not... He's big. He's a big guy. You know, he's 30 feet. That's still pretty substantial. The new information about this King Kong is that he is going to be 100 feet tall, which is the biggest King Kong we will have ever seen.
For those of you that don't have a 100-foot tape measure, think about like a 10-story building. Probably more than that. About a 10-story building, yeah. Each floor is about 10 feet.
Sure. Or like if you're really into football and you're from America, just think of like a third of that football field. You know, laid out. Am I right?
Yeah.
100 feet, 300 yards, 300 feet, 100 yards. There we go. Yeah. We're messing around. Anyway, 100 feet. That's pretty big.
I'm trying to think about it some more. I mean, I'm trying to really get a grasp on that scale.
But let me put it into perspective for you, Joe, because I wanted to talk to you about this specifically.
It's like I've jumped my dirt bike 135 feet. So if I take 35, maybe it's not so ridiculous.
Okay, but let me get to the ridiculous part. He's supposed to fight Godzilla coming up here. And I checked the information on Godzilla, and I remember it being quite insane. But 2014's Godzilla is a whopping 350 feet tall. That's 3.5 times the size of this King Kong. I don't know what they're going to do, if this is how they're still setting it up this way.
Gorilla,
but that,
man.
I mean,
strong. He's got to climb
over
the
strong,
back of Godzilla, pull his arms back, and snap him off.
Well, is it going to look like Baby Kong is fighting him? Like the real King Kong is somewhere out there still? Or like, you know what I mean? Like it's going to look like Kong's offspring as far as, if you want to compare the sizes. But that's a pretty big difference. That's huge.
It's big.
I mean, both of those things are huge, but still, like King Kong only being 100 feet. I wonder if they're going to do something to like amp him up, and then he'll be like the same size as Godzilla. Or they'll bring Godzilla down like with some sort of serum or something weird. I don't know. Because it's like, how do you make that fight seem cool then, you know? That's rough.
I don't know. Why are they fighting?
It's like if I fought
one of them like doing something bad, one's evil, one...
I don't know. They typically in the old King Kong versus Godzilla movie, Godzilla was the bad guy, if I remember correctly. And those were guys in suits, obviously, but they just kind of scaled Kong to the same as Godzilla, and they were just, fighting, and they were the same size.
Because I mean, lizards are dumb.
No, That's not true. Godzilla's usually sometimes the good guy. It's weird. Godzilla's sometimes the bad guy. If you're into Godzilla lore, it gets real messed up. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Joe? Is that going to be a weird, like, how do you think they're going to do that?
Well, my thought is, okay, he's a third of the size of Godzilla, right? So he's still pretty big. Godzilla isn't.
Is he going to use his
Godzilla
smarts?
isn't the most mobile guy. He's not the fastest.
That's true. That's true.
The gorilla's not going to jump in 400 feet of water and fight Godzilla.
Do you think he'll use like trip up methods? Like he'll be like making little traps for him? Like really, he's like taking cable and he's like running around and Godzilla just can't catch up to him and he's like tripping over things and he's like punching Godzilla on the ground. Like
the gorilla's got opposable thumbs, man. He can use tools around him, stuff to stab him with, etc. I mean, he picks up a freaking bridge girder from a demolished bridge and it's broken on one end. And he just stabs him with it. I mean, there's some possibilities there. So he doesn't have to be the same size. I mean, a gorilla of that size. Explain it to me. How the hell did he get so big?
Well, this is okay. You're asking.
Okay, first thing is I want to see a little bit of science behind this. I don't have any gripes about Godzilla because it's kind of like what's the word for it? Mythology almost, like these giant
mythological type of old god
giant lizard animals from this island that they did nuclear testing on. Mutations caused it to.
Good trailers, by the way, for Godzilla. Those ones were I was like, oh my gosh. Like, they'd show, like, his spines in the water, and they're like, yeah, we did those bikini, like, tests with the bombs and stuff like that. Bikini Island tests, I should say. And they, they're like, yep, and then we thought we made something, but we woke it up.
Sure.
And then, like, it's like, oh,
sure.
Like,
so,
whoops. Like,
yeah, true that, man.
Which, I don't know how they're going to paint. Maybe Kong will be the bad guy because Godzilla's kind of right now supposed to be a defender. He shows up and he's like, I'm going to stop. Like, he stopped those moth creatures and he's like, yeah, he defends the world and he goes away.
Sure. Yeah, maybe you're
But anyway,
right there.
sorry,
maybe
keep going.
Right there. I just, give me a little bit of a background on Kong, how did he come to be? I don't want to hear any of this. He just was.
Well, he just was on an island. No, it's okay. Kong, that Skull Island. I don't exactly know if there's any like radiation or nuclear fallout or anything like that, but they're just like super duper gigantic apes that were just like kept breeding and breeding, I believe, and then got to that point where he was just like like the last basically, and he's just huge at this point. And obviously, 100-foot tall thing on an island's big, and they couldn't do 350-foot tall for an island because it's like where's King Kong? It's like he's right there, like you can see from the boat.
Blob next to that mountain. That's him.
That's him. No matter how big your island is, it's like we'll probably spot him from the beach. Like, no, there he is. He's right over there. He's like hiding behind some branches. He's like got some in his in between his eyeballs. He's like,
palm trees, like.
Yeah, really big. But yeah, they're like between his fingers just because they're like basically toothpicks. He's Kong's a funny guy.
Needless to say, I just want to see a bit of a background story on him. Maybe some research that they were doing as they discovered him or happened upon him, something like that. I think that'd be cool. Do it some justice. But like I said, there's some possibilities there. Opposable thumbs, man. He can use tools and stab and freaking. He's strong. He's a gorilla. I'm picturing it'll be something like that scene from the Cincinnati Zoo. Dragging Godzilla through the shallow water. I'm just kidding.
He'd have to be pretty strong to
drag
Godzilla through anything. Yeah. I wonder if he's gonna grab him by the tail and do like a kind of Bowser Mario thing where he grabs him, kind of spins him around like in a circle, and then like lets him go, and Godzilla goes like flying. That'd be pretty funny. Probably not.
I doubt that Kong could pick him up necessarily, but I think he could like gain some control over his arms or something, and twist and stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where it goes. We just have to see the movie, obviously, and hopefully it'll be a little different from the last King Kong one, which was the Peter Jackson one. That one had some good qualities to it, but it was a little long, a little junked up, if you will. Had a little too much CGI stuff in there. Kong was good, and they actually have a new Kong ride open at Universal Studios in Orlando. That's pretty interesting, but it's based off of that Kong, which is weird because now they're doing a new Kong, so it's all over the place. I don't even understand it anymore. But yeah, I just want to share that with you guys, get your thoughts on that. But Joe, now that we're done talking about Kong, I think we're going to slip into this little segment. What do we call it?
Oh, What do we call that, Jimmy? I think it goes something like TimeKillers.
That's so much better. Look at it. You didn't even... You backed
I didn't
off
scream
a
this
little,
time,
and I really
guys.
do appreciate
I hope your ears are okay.
It's my ear. Well, yeah, well, they wouldn't know because I'm the one who has to
you
deal with
tone
that.
it
I have to
down
go through,
for
like,
that,
cut that audio out and, like...
Should I do a little louder, like, TimeKillers?
No, it's... You got the gruffness in there. But for anyone who doesn't know, TimeKillers is just, like, what we've been watching, reading, you know, doing whatever stuff. But, Joe, what kind of shows have you been watching, and what kind of games have you been playing, all that stuff?
Whew. Not many recent developments on that front, Jimmy. I guess I got back into the show Scandal. Whatever.
Okay, you mentioned that.
Whatever, but yeah, probably mentioned that last week. Just been busy, man. It's been tough getting anything new. I'm sure there'll be stuff coming out here in the near future. We'll have to see, but not much on my forefront right now. So, what do you got?
Fair enough. I got into Bloodline because of
welcome.
You. Thank you. And I forgot, TimeKillers, we should say, they're kind of recommendations too, but Bloodline's on Netflix. There are 2 seasons of it, and it's, without spoiling a lot, but it's just basically about this family, and it has this brother kind of move back down in the Keys of Florida.
Brother.
And
troublesome.
Very problematic brother, and it's a drama. It's very intense, and it's kind of about, his interaction with the family and all that.
It's a thinker. It's a bit of
a
thriller.
And then on the opposite spectrum, still a drama, I'm finishing up the final season of Downton Abbey, which I really wouldn't think would be up my alley at all, if you will. It's Abbey Alley. But it's like this, people herald it, and it's really good. Like, the acting is so good that it's hard to look at these people and not think that they're from this time and that they aren't these people.
It's PBS,
and that's something that's really impressive. It's PBS.
Crazy.
It's like, it's shocking. I'm like watching them, like, it's gripping. I don't understand why this show about these people who live in turn of the century England, who have this kind of fading kind of royalty to them in a way, where they're kind of living in this beautiful place, but the world is changing. It's the 1920s now at the final season, and they're kind of losing their old ways. They're kind of cutting down on staff. People aren't really into these huge lavish parties and living like this extravagantly anymore. And it's, the kind of cool dichotomy of having like those people who are kind of born into it, and then the people who serve them, and how those groups kind of interact, how they compare, contrast, and interact with one another. So it's just really fascinating. The acting is amazing. Maggie Smith is just so good. If you don't know Maggie Smith, she played Professor McGonagall in the Harry Potter series, and she's done a bunch of other things, but she's really great. She plays this kind of the old matriarch of the whole crew, and she's just this, oh man, she just nails it. So good. And then the other thing I actually started reading was the Warcraft, one of the Warcraft books, but it's called Rise of the Lich King. It's about Arthas, and he's a very popular and prominent character in the Warcraft franchise, where it's kind of a reverse on the old King Arthur tale, where he ends up getting a sword that, instead of making him like a holy king, it ends up kind of corrupting him and making him evil and dark. And it's that story about his kind of rise to power. And it's a very fascinating story, and kind of interesting enough, this book sets it up almost like a direct sequel to the movie that I just watched. In some ways, they kind of gloss over some big events in between those things, but it was kind of neat to see that going right into this, when I was like, oh my gosh, it's like I just left the movie theater, and I'm just like opening this book up, and it's just like, here you go, and I'm like, oh, cool. So maybe they'll go that way with the sequel. I don't know. Cool. So yeah, that's what I've been reading and watching, besides, all the other stuff. But now let's get into the questions part of the show, which we love our questions. Please send us questions. Just hashtag Critical Podcast and just send us some. But first question. Let's just go with this one first. Fragadin wanted to know, it was kind of a follow-up on the Microsoft press conference, did it live up to expectations? I know, Joe, you aren't so much into that scene, and I kind of covered it with my news video or whatnot.
That's all you, man. Give us a rundown.
Sure. So for, we kind of talked about like what I wanted to see, and, Microsoft, they do a good job every year. I think they kind of show off all that they can. And unfortunately, it's hard because you compare them to, it's like the superhero movies, you compare them to the other conferences, and you're like, oh man, like Sony was so classy. They had a live orchestra and they did such a good job. And it'd be cool to see more of that going forward. But they showed off everything that they could. They even talked about a new they had that new like slimmer Xbox, and then like a more powerful version of it coming, called Project Scorpio.
That's cool.
And it's interesting. I don't know. We'll see how it goes because, Sony was going to they were thinking about doing that one time because they have a Project Neo, which is the same thing, like PS4K, if you will. But they didn't talk about that at all at their press conference. So it's kind of like Microsoft kind of jumped the gun and was kind of like, oh, like, we have this too. Like, we've got powerful things too. So we'll see about that. But they did a good job. They lingered a little too long on some things. And, it lived up to my expectations, but it didn't blow them away. Sony does that every time, even though I'm not like a huge Sony, like, crazy fanboy by any means. Sony just is very classy, and I hope that more people do that. And the thing that one of my favorites over at EZA, Kyle Bossman, said, he said, like, they didn't use what they call, Joe, as like this press conference voice, where it's like you kind of enunciate every word. It's just like, and this experience will be available to everyone with an Xbox One. Like, that's how, like, they talk in a lot of those things. And Sony didn't do that at all. They just talked to you like it's like a normal person, being very respectful, and they're just like, here are our games. They showed all their games. They only had 3 people talk at Sony, whereas Microsoft kept bringing people out, and they were talking and talking. It's like, just show me your game. You don't have to...
talking big name people or just, developers?
Typically just game developers. The only one that I think that you would find funny, Joe, is that for EA, for Battlefield 1, after the press conference, they had, in this spot, they had Jamie Foxx and Zac Efron there, and they were talking to him, and it was really funny because they're like, hey, like, you guys you excited about this game? And Zac Efron's just like, yeah, I'm jazzed. Like, he, like, that's all he said about it. They had, like, so many big name, like, or kind of big names. Well, they had, like, Snoop Dogg there smoking a joint. They had, like...
yeah, because they were letting them test out the game, right? They were, like, an early preview type thing, alpha. And they were...
No, it was just, like...
They were letting them play it or something. They were putting them on teams and stuff. And there was some sort of funny little clip about Snoop Dogg. I forget what it was. Something about him being relaxed or jazzed for the game, and and then they go to the photo of him actually playing after his little interview or being on stage, and it's him with the joint hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah, it was weird. They had a lot of, like, it's just, I wonder how much they paid those people. I felt like they probably put a lot of money into just getting too, like 50.
Because I've heard that Snoop Dogg doesn't even smoke anymore, so I've heard that. Well, just saying. Getting off topic, but whatever.
But anyway, Fragadin, thank you for the question. But yeah, to answer it, they lived up to my expectations. They didn't blow me away. They showed off everything they kind of needed to. I wish I could have gotten a little more on Gears, or maybe a little bit more on Sea of Thieves, a little more specifics. But that is to come. Sure. But anyway, let's get to our next question, which is a little more group oriented. Anna asks, if you went into the far future for one whole day, what would you bring back when you return to the present? And you could bring back anything you want. And so I'm not really sure, so I wanted you to start, Joe, because mine are probably really boring by contrast.
Things. Did she say limit it to 1?
I think she said limit it to...
Here? Let's define it very well.
What would you bring back when you return to the present? She said anything.
Knowledge.
Ooh.
Well, hear me out now. If I'm going to the future, first thing I'm looking at, how are the stocks doing?
Yeah, that's just, I thought that too. I was like,
am I going to buy when I go back to 2016? Like back in 1996, you would have bought Amazon stock, right? Or back in, when did Apple come out? If you would have bought some Apple stock, oh my gosh. I saw a guy had like $100-some worth of Apple stock. It's now worth like some odd million or something.
Oh, wow. He's like, I'll hold on to that.
So... I feel like that would be something I would invest some time and research into when I'm in the future, and I bring back that knowledge. I'd write it on my notepad, or but besides that, other things like technology. What's coming up down the pipe, and what could I take advantage of knowing? Could jump, be the spoiler, so to speak, and come out with something before someone else does. Me in the construction industry, I'd probably look at how have things changed, what new things are out there, because in my industry there's constantly new things and new technology coming out, new ways to build, and people every day are coming up with new patents for new types of technology, tools, materials, building products. I could come back to this present time, totally blow it up and beat them to the punch, and I just sound like a scammer.
Yeah, you do.
Well, whatever.
Just like that's just who I am.
Yep.
See, I'd probably try to, if I could, it'd probably be maybe by that time, depending on how far in the future we could get to, like a pseudo Iron Man suit. Like if they just made some for like recreational use.
Okay,
so
if we're getting way out there, okay, yeah, so in the future, there's Iron Man suits available. All right, I'm getting one of those and bringing it back. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Or like a super soldier serum type thing. Like I get in the army and then I'd be like, I'm going back, and then I just leave.
Guys.
I just teleport out. But it'd have to be. We only get a day though, Joe. That's true. We gotta stick to that day. We gotta move faster. The stock thing's probably a good idea. Be like, you just go talk to a stockbroker all day. You're like, all right, just say hypothetically, if I lived in 2016,
back then, what would I have
what stock would you say?
In, to get to now, what would be a good investment back in the day? He's like, well, you know how this one blew up back in 2016. You remember that back in July of 2016, this one just blew up. I was like, yes, tell me more.
Yeah, only one day though. That's hard. I don't know if I could work fast. It would probably just be that. That sounds boring. But just how about you pick an object? Let's just pick one object that you can bring back.
Well, okay, so we make some assumptions here. I think that's a good one. If they had like some sort of Iron Man suit, of course I'm snagging one of those suckers. Whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, I noticed that on the rack we're missing an Iron Man suit. Those are only government issue. What happened?
Or I mean, not even like it wouldn't have weapons. It would just be used to like get to work. Maybe just fly around.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That would be what I'd be into. The new gadgetry, probably the new modes of transportation. That could include an Iron Man suit, stuff like that. So like, the cool new motorcycles. I get into fashion a little bit. I'd be checking that kind of stuff out. But yeah, there's so many things. But needless to say, I'd be looking at, innovative ways to make money for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, money can make you happy, as opposed to what they might say about it.
Sure, they can. I don't know if it makes you truly happy. That's not the Critical Review's formal stance on money. No, but money's still a necessary evil.
Yeah.
If they had a teleportation belt, that'd be pretty neat. But then if you did it too often, the government would be all over you and be like, yeah, we saw pictures of you right here in Cairo yesterday. I'd be like, I know it looks just like me, and I might be wearing the exact same shirt as in that picture, but I swear it's not me. They'd be like, how did you do it? And I'd be like, oh, it's this fashionable belt. Like,
no. See,
like,
this guy's
press
hair
it
is
and get out of there.
To the left. Mine's always parted to the right.
Like, sir, we took a picture of you in a mirror. Be like, oh, well, then that is me. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably go with a suit or something kind of cool. But yeah, some sort of tech thing. But I'd probably want to do something that I could conceal in my own home. Because if I was using it out in the open, if you had say 2030 Mustang or whatever, people would notice. Like people would be like, that's weird. And you'd be like, it's a new Tesla. Like,
it's just shifty-eyed, like, it's a Mustang, but I created a new fiberglass body on top. It's my own creation. Yeah,
exactly.
I kept the Mustang emblems. That's a good idea, though, Jimmy. I'd for sure go for the new Mustangs. Heck yeah.
Out of all the vehicles,
you hear that, Anna? That's
you have to take an object.
Mustang.
All right.
Mustang.
We'll just say you have infinite money with this, so you just walk in and just
I'll
take one of those.
Just straight out steal it. It's in the future.
Okay. I guess you only have one day. They'd never. Dude, they probably know before you're about to commit the crime, like Minority Report's. I'd be like, sir, we're about to arrest you. And you'd be like, for what? He'd be like, stealing a Camaro. You've been thinking about it. You'd be like, I haven't done anything.
Yeah, they'd probably Google it and they'd find a YouTube podcast from 2016 and be like, Joe Lever, and they'd arrest me at age 30-something.
I just see you just like whispering in the guard's ear. You'd be like, I'm taking you back to 2016 with me. Everyone you love won't even be born yet. They'd be like, how far in the future do you think you are? Like, that'd be so good.
Shut up,
my
math
gosh.
was never my strong suit.
Then I'd have to go to the future. I'd be like, oh, it's my turn to go get an object. And they'd be like, actually, we need you to come with us because you need to bail your friend out of this super jail. I'd be like, oh, future jail sucks. But it's very clean. It's very clean.
Dang it, Joe.
That's really great. For me. No, that's all right. Well, I think that's the show, Joe. Thank you so much. That was a good time. We got through a lot of stuff. There wasn't a ton of news this week, but
still
we made it work.
Things there. I hope people appreciate that little insight and thought on directors and studios and whatnot. And I thought that was interesting to me. So yeah, we talked about a few good things today, and thanks to everybody for their questions. Those are some good questions, interesting ones. Had to make some assumptions on that future one, but finally pinned it down on a new Mustang.
You're welcome. I knew it for you. You could almost do editorials, Joe. We could just do like a little thing.
I
saw
an awesome Mustang drive by today when I was coming home from a meeting, and I totally like almost broke my neck. I turned so hard because it was an all black Mustang, 2014, looked just like the one I owned a few months ago, and I was like, oh, I miss it so much. Anywho,
I'm sorry, man.
Back on to the conclusion of the podcast. I'm sorry, people. Don't let me talk about
That's
Mustangs, fine. Jimmy. It's bad news.
I try not to. I try to be respectful and not cut you off, but it's it's a courtesy I don't have reciprocated. But anyway.
Well, hold on, Jimmy. So there was.
Thank you. But thank you for your questions. If you have any more for us, feel free at any time to tweet at us with the hashtag Critical Podcast. I think that's just going to be the easiest way to do that. But to follow us on Twitter, I am at GoCritical, all one word. And Joe, if they want to follow you, where can they do that?
You know this better than I do. You better just tell them.
He is at Lever_627.
That's my Twitter, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's your Twitter.
No, you're right. It's my Twitter. Yeah.
And that's Lever, just like Beaver, but with an L. You can start laughing now. That's just how Joe always says it, so that's why it sounds very like robotic when I say it.
L-E-A, V as in Victor, E-R, _627.
Yeah, that's it. Is it? It's underscore. Yeah, we're right. Okay.
Hit us up.
Anyway, also we're on Instagram. Joe is a little different on Instagram. I never post that thing, but you can tell them if you want to. I'm not on there as much. I just click. I like Yoren Evers stuff. Which, by the way, thank you again to Yoren Evers. Check out his Instagram, and thanks to This Is Dale once again, because you'll hear his outro music.
Yeah,
very
Instagram.
Shortly.
You know what?
So.
I wish I shared more critical reviews, affiliated stuff on Instagram a little more, but I haven't been as much. We need to start.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, but yeah, my Instagram is LeverJ627. So
follow us up. And also, if you really, really do like the podcast, feel free to like it and follow us, subscribe, and do all those things to all the various social media outlets. Yes, and I was going to say the biggest thing you can do for us right now is to share it if you want to see us continue to grow and maybe even see our faces one day, depending if we get some better tech for it potentially down the line.
We're talking about it, people. I think we need to get that done.
I know, and guess who's, you talk about it, but guess who's the guy who's got to do it? I'm pointing at myself.
Almighty editor, Mr. Jimmy Good.
Oh gosh, I get so tired sometimes. People are like, oh no. No, I love doing this. No, seriously. But seriously, if you have anyone...
But seriously.
Seriously. I'm just going to say, keep serious. I feel like seriously is one of those words, the more you say it, the less it holds water. I mean, like most words are like that. But you just, seriously.
It was so funny in a meeting today when the owner of this building, he's like, this will be the most scrutinized part of the building. You realize that, so we really need to pay close attention to detail. Next thing you know, we're talking about a totally different area, and he's like, this will be a very scrutinized part of the building. We're like, well, hold on. There can only be one spot that's the most scrutinized. Now it doesn't mean anything. It just, nope, we lost its meaning.
I'd be like, which parts can I just screw around on and people won't notice? Because that's probably where we're going to do cutbacks on. Like, do people worry about stairs not being good? Because that's probably where we're going to start. Like, nobody looks at this.
People
those
trip,
inspectors,
break their
so
face.
much work.
It's a whole ordeal. Lawsuits.
Potato, tomato, potato, tomato. If you know that, you should let me know. But anyway, to finish up with a wrap up, thank you for sharing and doing all that stuff. And get after us anytime. You guys have any questions for us or any feedback or any comments, because we love to hear from you, because you guys are why we do this, because we want to share our thoughts with you.
Check us out on Twitch too, Jimmy. You're always streaming, and we're always having a good time on there. So you gotta check us out.
Yeah, definitely. I typically do this thing called Throwback Thursday. This week, because this podcast will probably go up a little late, I'm doing a probably Fallback Friday. We'll see, just because I'm working Thursday, so it might be a little different. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. We've been playing Uncharted, but we've been playing a lot of... Yeah, check the Twitter, exactly. And then been playing Uncharted on there. Been playing Overwatch here and there as well. And if you have any recommendations, just let us know. But thank you again to everyone who tuned in today, and we'll see you next time. Take care.